the Custodes player from last game, with Steve, who was
The Ultramarines.
Yeah. So we're just gonna do a quick 20-minute recap of how our stream game went for this current tournament, and you can find the entire the live stream clip in the description below. And if you want, you can subscribe, comment, tell friends about us. It'd be great, and also maybe play a game with us eventually. So the things that we get to cover today for you guys is stuff like deploying strategies, went first, going first, just kind of going down the checklist of how the game goes. So the deployment, we ended up rolling on the Scouring, probably the hardest mission in the GT book ever. Simply because it's a hold 2, hold 3, hold more for primary, and then at that point we also are really funky deployment boxes, because it's something like 16 inches up or something like that.
Yeah, roughly. I think it's 16 up, but yeah, it's real close. Yeah, it is definitely a challenge, and it's a weird deployment. It's a weird mission as a whole. They kind of focus you or push you towards the center of the table. So, Robert, why did you deploy the way that you did? What was the purpose?
It was because of the fact that knowing how fast my army goes compared to how fast your army is, since you're all foot troops, I could maneuver on the outside of my range, so that way you walk into my range before you get to me. And that was the general idea, but obviously as we played through the game, we both ended up deploying that way, being in the forest and being really hard to shoot at each other.
Yeah, I think central deployment was key for both of us, just to give you versatility, because you have this great line of blocks, line of sight blocking terrain in the center, but it gives you the versatility to push either left or right flank depending what's going on. So, of course, we had our flankers out there to make sure that deep strikes or any other deployments could be denied, and they couldn't necessarily just drop in your backfield. But I really think both of us had the same mentality, that we wanted to basically remain outside of line of sight, and the few shots that can get to the flank and actually do it, we were in the forest to capitalize on that -1 to hit.
Yeah, so like obviously in the first turn when I shot at your Eradicators was clear proof of that. I dumped 2 Claudiuses. Sure, you transhuman and they were -1 to hit, but it was still just I only killed 1.5 of them, and the next turn, during your turn, it was proven to be...
To be fair, my memory, your dice were not average. You actually had some poor rolling in that.
Oh yeah, no, I had really bad rolling, but in general...
In general, you should have picked up probably 2.5 models by math, so 1.5 wasn't too far. But they're incredibly resilient at times, and that's something that's making Marines so powerful in this current meta, is that we have all the tricks. We have ways to deploy and reach shenanigans. I feel personally on deployment, we both played almost the same, and we both try to minimize the amount of impact on that first turn advantage.
Yeah, so what it ended up coming down to, because I went first, I know how I can take advantage of stuff going first. With so like obviously right here, my Claudiuses and stuff like that moved up here, so that way I was 24 inches from his Eradicators that were touching the forest over here. Now, after that, we can see how Steve moved forward with his entire army, keeping the chunk of it back here, just making it so that way I couldn't shoot at anything. So my Claudius is here. Poor light blue one got put down 1 wound, but
yeah, I got very lucky on that. I think I did a little bit more damage than I probably should have.
Yeah. So at that point, Steve, for me going first here, like this is clearly on the second turn here now, because I remember moving the bikes up this far on my second turn and being in range to melt these intercessors quite thoroughly.
Yeah, and the point was for you to come around and actually nail those intercessors and take them out. The thing is that unfortunately by committing this, you kind of expose yourself to the entirety of my army potentially coming this way.
Yeah, and overall that was actually the play I had to do, because I kept them in a line behind this crate, so that way if your army came forward. Now, sadly, I made the misplay of putting the wounded guy somewhere right back here on the next turn.
Yeah, instead of right here in the front, which is where he should have been. So that way you had line of sight, and that would have been the engagement. And once he died here, you would have been out of my line of sight, so I would have had to swoop back over here to try to gain that line of sight.
Yeah, so that was the movement error for me. And then as we can see going into let's see, yeah, this is the second turn. This is still your this is still my second turn because obviously Hurricane Bolters did a lot, and then yeah, here is where I made the big oof. Because right here it was, I put 2 bikes out there. I turned this guy back here when I should have gone 1, 2, 3, 4 bike. Because one bike was enough to kill that intercessor, and I could have just all.
So what was the strategy of you actually, in your strategy of pushing this flank? What was exactly what you were thinking? Was it to try to roll this flank and press me back into this, where your main assault was going?
It was basically the bikes flying over here was going to be either he dedicates his eradicators over here, which my bike, so your eradicators go this way, and then my bikes come in, clean up these intercessors, and then immediately go into the rest of your army, because obviously Gilliman is the pivot point of your army. So with where Gilliman is, you're going to dedicate most of your rerolls to where they are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So part of it too is that knowing this was your full press and really where the vast majority of your army is that I can fall back slightly, still utilize Gilliman, and still use this angle of attack as you come around this corner. While I want to press in the center, I have that option, but I have to take care of this unit.
Yeah, because everyone knows that the bikes are obviously a murder ball because they charge, they get to reroll wounds. And with Gilliman, the turn where I kept your blade guard here, I think
that was an amazing Tanglefoot.
It was an amazing Tanglefoot, but I actually think it was the wrong thing to do now because of the fact
also because they would have supported him. Now they couldn't press back towards the center. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, because of the fact that in the later turns, your blade guard were able to come to this building where you wanted them anyway.
Sure.
So at that point, Tanglefootting them, yeah, I kept them away from getting my bikes, but if they had made it into my bikes, Gilliman couldn't have been over here. He would have had gone back over this way.
Sure.
With his 9 inches of movement. Now, obviously, we both kind of took bad secondaries sometimes. Like I took deploy scramblers. I didn't perform the action once because I didn't have enough advantage on you to actually take advantage of it.
I think part of that is because your low model counts, and I think that's the issue is that you have limited amount of units, so it's hard for you to actually dedicate. Can I give up the firepower to do so? Now, hopefully, in your new book, you'll have a stratagem where you can still do the action and still be able to fire. Which would be awesome, like most books do now. Yeah,
the general consensus about deployed scramblers and Custodes is you don't do it until turn 4 because at that point your Terminator's on the board, you save 2 command points, and then you just turn them into the lines. So you go, I'm here in the middle, and then I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go here, and then you save 3 of them you save 2 of them to go and punch whatever you want.
It's valid.
So that's usually what I would do, but obviously that requires me to have the advantage on the board. Which was kind of the sad part because all of your army was over here. And now since we're in round 3, you have your Victrix Guard, so now I have to dedicate a unit to here to clear this out. And yeah, you had popped the Callias in that turn, which made me really, really sad. And this is where I committed the Terminators, which was the play I had to do to get rid of these and then to force you to come back this way.
I agree you had to do this, but I also agree I think it was a turn too late. I think they should have been here on the prior turn. Therefore, you did, and then you engage and kill this unit. Then you forced me to put something more valuable than 70 points of Becketrix Guard to hold that center because of the moment.
Yeah.
And you forced my hand instead of me choosing when I want to engage you.
Yeah, the other thing that I should have done is, moving all of my Cladius and stuff over here on this turn. What I should have done is I should have moved the Cladius from where it was over there to more so over here. So that way, when your stuff goes here into the middle, I could easily just take the Cladius and just pump shots down.
For me, personally, I would have had one here, and I understand why you had them stacked was for the reroll, but you make me think twice if there's that much overwhelming firepower on either flank. So I knew that I could refuse this flank, repitch, and actually choose this lane to go, and your Callias are going to have limited options of shooting through this lane.
Yeah, well, and also where my bike captain is, where he sat there for 2 turns. He didn't do anything.
He did.
So
he did. He was scoring you primaries.
Yeah, I know he was scoring me points. I'm just saying in the actual game plan of my army.
Sure.
With the Callias being here, that first one that actually died, this one could have flown up over here because the bike captain and the rest of the bikes had enough movement, and then the bike, this Cladius
if that Cladius left there and then you use these 2 units to pitch and now pressure this flank for me, it wouldn't allow me to refuse and fall back this way and just take targets of opportunity.
Yeah, because overall my Custodian Guard that are up here, like, yeah, they stood on this objective for 2 turns, well, for 3 turns. But then otherwise, they were sitting there tangling with these stupid intercessors over here.
That for somehow ended up being incredibly resilient. That was a surprise.
Yeah, you made 1 save to keep them alive.
That's all it takes.
And then I failed an 8-inch charge. But anyway.
And paying the 2 points to keep them on the point to store those points was huge.
Yeah.
To make sure that you don't even take the risk. I understand they would have only broken on a 6. But still, paying that 2 command points is always the play if it's going to score you primary points.
Yeah, and then in general, looking at this right here, you still have all 5 of your eradicators are back here. So literally, it was here's one Cleus, your eradicators are focusing them. Oh, my second Cleus comes up here and pumps them in the back.
Exactly,
which would have been the better play.
I think so as well.
But yeah, no.
That way you could pressure both flanks at the same time using your range to your advantage instead of allowing me to pitch either left or right.
Yeah, and the fact that this box here, now obviously we had line of sight through the half of it here.
Sure.
But it was still basically a box of no one can go here. Yeah, my Cletuses can fly and land up here, but there's no reason for me to land my Cletuses on top of the building, because even on this building, they can't see your army.
I agree, because I'm lower and whatever else. And the way that new modern terrain rules work, it doesn't matter if you're here and you can see something back here, because I'm obscured by this, you can't do it.
Yeah, and in general, the way that this all kind of worked out, because my bike captain stayed here as long as he did, and yeah, I eventually will move him up here to go into these aggressors. But then the problem was Gilliman's here, heroic intervention from them. I would have needed to, because the other option was sending him up here to go and charge the apothecary and die to Gilliman that turn.
Yeah.
Which would have been...
Well, you might have at least traded from my apothecary, but at this point in the game, what does that really do for you?
Yeah, no, it didn't. It would have gotten me 3 points for assassinate.
Sure.
But that's honestly what...
But then you're trading so on the same hand, you're trading your captain. And remember that with Oath of Moments, you've got to kill a character or a vehicle each turn. So feeding me a character can potentially give me 2 points as well. So you're trading 3 for potentially 2 if the rest of your characters don't die or a vehicle doesn't die.
Yeah.
But these things are squishy.
Oh yeah, no, the fact that they are T7, whereas the Telemon is T8, is the biggest argument in the book of
Sure.
They have the same guns, but the Telemon is 1 toughness higher, has a better invuln, and is 35 more points.
Right.
So that's where it comes down, and he also moves 6 inches slower. So I personally like the Cladiuses because of the mobility, like how we keep talking about how I could have sent 1 Cladius down here, 1 Cladius over here, and then have all of that firepower to go on either flank of the table.
Right, and at this point, pressuring me on this primary objective was a brilliant move if this one guy hadn't survived. And I understand why you charged. That made great sense to go ahead and pressure him and take me off this point, because if you took me off this point, we're able to challenge this, I'd be restricted to just this one, and this 1 point wouldn't have scored me any primary.
Oh yeah, no. The other thing that I should have done is when I move the Cladiuses over here,
Right.
Sure, I have 1 Cladius shoot at your eradicators to try and pull out your transhuman, and then I have the other Cladius dedicate all of its fire into that intercessor unit.
Yeah.
Because then that would have left that flank completely empty.
Agreed.
And then at that point I would have had free reign to walk forward.
Then these 2 would be secured on your end, but I was already in, because this is your weak side, I was already pushing here and trying to make the game at this point anyways. So by you clearing this flank, we would have changed to a more of a traditional Dawn of War deployment and just pivoted out of where we were, and that's really where we were going to end up. That's actually where I thought we were going to go, and that's why on turn 1 I decided that this is being your weak side was the side I was going to press, knowing that your engagement range is very close to mine.
Oh yeah, no, it's my shooting range is longer than yours, but your
tanks, but
everything else is literally a trade-off of I put my Terminators in range of Eradicators in order to get to them.
Exactly.
You put your Inceptors in range of my bikes to shoot at them. It was literally how we just had to trade off in order to actually make things work.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so otherwise, the game after maybe about turn 3 definitely was solidified in your favor because I wasn't able to take back any pressure. And then obviously
You weren't able to cut the board, which is the issue. So on this deployment, which is so important, is that you've got to fight for the center objective and hold both of your flanks. And if you can't do that in the scouring, this is where you lose. And this is why it's such a complicated mission for people to actually win. Because they have to be able to fight for midboard.
because like we can see
And here we are already turn 5.
Yeah, we can see here in round 5, you still have 4 Blade Guard vets. I have 0 Terminators.
Exactly.
Because of the fact that my Terminators didn't do anything. And then obviously we have Trajan and my Bannerman left trying to go and deal with that. But
When your Terminators decided to commit, they actually put themselves in position for my entire force to come in and actually counter them, which is why they went down. They're incredibly durable, but they can't take an entire army's worth of shit.
oh yeah, no, it requires the same amount of command point investment that I put in my bikes that were down here. Because my bikes ate up like 6 or 8 of my command points to try and keep them alive as long as they did, which is what needed to happen.
They did, but they died ultimately, so that was a way of not only killing a unit against you, but to eat up the vast majority of your command points.
Yeah.
So I think that actually could have been a tactical error in some ways, because holding a couple command points could have secured your Terminators a little bit later, where you're out of command points at this point, which made it much tougher to keep things alive.
Oh yeah, no, like how I said earlier about my bikes having 2 out here, then 1, 2, and then 3 being long ways. If I had just done the 1 bike in the Intercessor, kept the 4 of them back here, that probably would have saved me 4 command points in survivability.
I agree.
So, but yeah, otherwise, this video is going to be uploaded on its own. So as you guys watch the game, and then you can come back and watch this for a more detailed breakdown of why we did certain things and obviously how things are going, because this one is going to be uploaded separately. And then yeah, no, otherwise the last bit of this video is clearly getting Trajan getting melted to the face, and then my Bannerman surviving 5 Eradicators punching him.
Tell me about it.
But no, that was the other game. So the end of the game score was a whopping 75 for Steve to my 25, because I made some silly secondary choices and a lot of big tactical errors. But that's how we learn. We get our face punched in by a lot.
Definitely what happens sometimes, and that's the thing with competitive play. You got to be able to take it on the chin. And thank you, Robert, so much for the game. It was a good time. I actually really enjoyed the game as well.
Yeah.
I love facing the Custodes.
Yeah, it was a very great game, Steve. And since this was the only second time I played you, this has been eye-opening. I still have yet to play Dan. I know Dan's going to stomp me in the face at some point.
Yeah, I'm gonna get him one day. I tell you, that tricksy Dan.
Yeah, but otherwise, next week, as Matt had already mentioned in the end of the last video, it's going to be Eric with the new Drukhari and our buddy Aaron with White Scars playing next week on Sunday. Normally they happen on Saturdays or Sundays, but the only availability for both of them is Sundays. So feel free to come back next week to watch that really fun stream game, because we get to watch maybe a murder ball of a Succulus happens where she does like 3 mortal wounds on 6s.
That'd be rad.
And then at that point, yeah, this is going to be pretty much the end of it. It was great to have you guys come watch, maybe leave comments, but be sure to like, subscribe, tell friends about the Smite Club channel, and we will be back next week with Eric and Aaron.
And this is Smite Club signing off. Look forward to seeing you guys in the future. Thanks.